Right now, sitting in the battery of the device you are holding is literally a microscopic speck of a dead star.
Yeah, it's pretty wild to think about.
It really is. And I mean, it's the exact same element that gives royal porcelain that, calming, iconic blue
I
color.
get that classic cobalt blue.
Exactly. But at the same time, it is the exact same element that's currently fueling one of the most intense, heavily debated human rights and supply chain crises of the 21st century.
Because we are entirely surrounded by it. We're entirely dependent on it. And yet, the vast majority of people will never see it in its pure form. I mean, it just operates completely in the shadows.
Totally. Well, welcome to a brand new deep dive. Today, our mission is to unpack a highly detailed dossier we received. It's simply titled Cobalt.pdf.
Which is a very unassuming title for such a heavy topic.
Right. But we are exploring how a single element, atomic number 27 on the periodic table, somehow combines this immense magnetic strength, vivid pigment chemistry, absolute biological necessity, and just massive geopolitical tension.
It really does it all.
It does. So we're going to trace cobalt's path from the violent explosions of deep space straight into your bloodstream and finally right into the lithium-ion battery of the device delivering this audio to you right now.
So, to understand what cobalt is actually doing on Earth, we first have to look at the incredibly violent environment required to create it. You mentioned a dead star earlier, which is completely accurate.
Right, because it didn't just appear out of nowhere.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The universe didn't just start with cobalt. I mean, the Big Bang essentially gave us a universe filled with lightweight basics, primarily hydrogen and helium.
And the source material points out that to get heavier elements, you need stars acting as these giant cosmic pressure cookers. But cobalt requires a really specific kind of stellar event, right?
Yeah.
Like, it isn't just baking inside a normal star like our sun.
No, it requires extreme destruction. To forge an atom of cobalt, which has an atomic mass of nearly 59, you need the unimaginable pressure and temperature that only happens when a massive star runs out of fuel.
It collapses under its own gravity, right?
Right. Yeah, it collapses and then rebounds in a supernova explosion.
Yeah.
The whole process is called stellar nucleosynthesis.
Okay, let's unpack this, because the dossier uses this brilliant comparison that really clarified things for me.
Oh, the worker-warrior thing.
Yes. So if iron is the ubiquitous, everyday worker warrior of the cosmos, the stuff that's abundant makes up the bulk of our planet's core, builds the steel framework of our cities. Cobalt is the intense specialist.
That's a great way to put it.
Right. It's rare. I mean, it makes up just a tiny fraction of the Earth's crust compared to iron or nickel, but it's highly potent. It operates behind the scenes to handle the extreme jobs that the worker warriors just cannot survive.
And its solid-state properties back that up perfectly. When you isolate cobalt at room temperature, it's this dense, hard, silvery gray transition metal with just a slight bluish tint.
And it's heavy.
Very.
Yeah.
It has a density of nearly 8.90 grams per cubic centimeter, making it heavier than iron. And crucially, it's ferromagnetic.
Meaning it holds a magnetic charge.
Exactly. It holds a permanent magnetic charge, which is a really rare trait. It shares that mostly with just iron and nickel.
That structural intensity is fascinating, but I kind of want to pivot to where this intense specialist role gets incredibly personal. Because biologically speaking, human beings are entirely dependent on this cosmic rarity.
We literally have supernova dust functioning inside our bodies right now.
Which is insane to think about.
What's fascinating here is that humans do not need, nor can our bodies actually safely process free, raw cobalt metal.
Right. The text said it's toxic.
Very toxic.
Yeah.
If you're exposed to industrial cobalt dust, it can cause severe respiratory and heart issues. But we absolutely must have a very specific complex molecule that holds a single cobalt atom trapped right at its dead center.
And that molecule is vitamin B12.
Yep, chemically known as cobalamin.
Cobalamin. The elemental name is literally hidden right inside the biological name.
A nice little clue.
It is. But I want to push back on just listing B12 as important, because I feel like people hear the word vitamin and they think of something mild, like vitamin C in a glass of orange juice.
Sure, somebody would just take a gummy for it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So how does this single atom of cobalt actually function inside us?
Okay, think of the B12 molecule like a microscopic catcher's mitt. In biology, it's called a Corin ring, and sitting right in the pocket of that mitt is the cobalt atom.
So it's catching things.
Exactly. Because of cobalt's unique chemical properties, it can easily grab onto other molecules, hold them temporarily, and then pass them off. It basically acts as a highly efficient chemical transit hub. Specifically, it catches and transfers methyl groups.
And without that transit hub passing those molecules around, what happens? Does our biological machinery essentially just jam up?
It grinds to an absolute halt. B12 is the primary driver for creating red blood cells. It's required to synthesize DNA.
Wow.
And it maintains the myelin sheath, which is the protective insulation around your nerves.
So if you don't have...
If you've ever felt the profound, crushing fatigue of anemia, or the cognitive fog and numbness associated with a severe B12 deficiency, you have intimately experienced a biological cobalt deficiency.
The transit hub shut down.
The hub shut down, the DNA couldn't replicate properly, and your nervous system basically started short-circuiting.
That's terrifying. Our whole biology is held together by this microscopic trace nutrient. It's just incredibly quiet and invisible inside us.
But the dossier highlights a really jarring contradiction here.
Oh, the split personality thing.
Yeah. While cobalt operates silently in our bloodstream, its chemical personality, when exposed to human industry and art, is incredibly loud.
It is the ultimate split personality. So let's look at how it behaves with light. When human beings started isolating cobalt compounds, they discovered its +2 and +3 oxidation states.
Which sounds complicated, but...
Yeah, let's avoid getting bogged down in the chemistry jargon. An oxidation state just refers to how many electrons the cobalt atom has lost or gained when it bonds with other elements, right?
Essentially, yes. And missing those specific electrons actually changes the shape of the atom's outer shell.
Okay.
So when visible light hits that shell, the cobalt atoms absorb certain wavelengths, mostly the reds and yellows, and they bounce back incredibly intense, vivid colors.
And depending on what the cobalt is bonded to, you get vibrant pinks, purples, or greens. But the most famous one historically is cobalt blue.
Oh, absolutely. We see this in ancient Chinese ceramics, in medieval stained glass windows, fine porcelain, centuries-old tile work.
It was the premier mineral pigment for achieving that deep, calming, almost eternal blue. It just looks so delicate and fragile.
But then human civilization hit the Industrial Revolution.
Right. Everything changed.
We stopped looking at cobalt purely for its optical beauty, and we started testing its physical limits under extreme stress.
And I really struggled to reconcile this part of the dossier, to be honest. How is it physically possible that the exact same element giving us a delicate, calming blue porcelain teacup is the exact same brutal, high-performance metal required to keep a commercial jet engine turbine from melting mid-flight?
It seems impossible, right?
Those seem like completely contradictory realities.
Well, it all comes down to the architecture of the metal itself. It is a material of high performance and high consequence. I mean, pure cobalt has a melting point of almost 1,495 degrees Celsius.
That's incredibly hot.
But its real superpower is its crystal structure. At room temperature, the atoms in cobalt are stacked in what is called a hexagonal close-packed structure.
So imagine stacking cannonballs in a rigid, repeating honeycomb pattern.
That is exactly the right image. It's incredibly strong, but it's rigid. But when cobalt is exposed to extreme temperatures, like, say, inside a jet engine, it doesn't just melt or snap.
What does it do?
Its internal architecture physically shifts into a face-centered cubic structure.
Wait, so the honeycomb just rearranges itself?
Yeah, it shifts into a tightly packed grid. And that grid allows the microscopic layers of metal to slide past one another just slightly without breaking the overall bond.
Oh, wow.
So when metallurgists mix cobalt into high-strength superalloys, it provides this incredible dynamic resistance to extreme heat, structural stress, and corrosion. You literally cannot build a modern aerospace turbine without cobalt superalloys bracing the fan blades against unimaginable thermal pressure.
So it's basically bracing itself. The atoms are shifting their stance to absorb the heat.
Exactly.
So this intense specialist stabilizes extreme physical stress in aerospace. But the dossier notes it goes even further into the extremes, right into the realm of nuclear energy and medicine.
Yeah, we have to talk about the radioactive isotope cobalt-60.
Right.
By adding a neutron to a standard cobalt atom in a nuclear reactor, it becomes unstable. And as it tries to find stability, it decays, emitting intense gamma radiation.
Which is what hospitals use to sterilize surgical equipment by destroying the DNA of bacteria. And oncologists use it in targeted radiotherapy to destroy cancer cells.
The through line here is extreme stabilization and extreme energy. Whether it is bracing a jet engine against thermal destruction, emitting high-energy gamma rays to save a life, or acting as the metabolic transit hub in your blood, it's doing specialized work that nothing else can do.
And that unique ability to stabilize extreme energy didn't just revolutionize aerospace and medicine. It recently sparked a massive global technological revolution.
The battery boom.
Exactly. And that brings us to the most complicated, heavily debated chapter of the Cobalt dossier.
The shift into portable digital life and the renewable energy transition.
Right. We needed a way to store massive amounts of electrical power in very small, portable spaces. We needed the lithium-ion battery, whether it's your smartphone, your laptop, or an electric vehicle. These batteries are the heart of the modern world.
And to understand why cobalt is trapped in this new narrative, we have to look at what happens inside one of those batteries. A lithium-ion battery has two main sides, the anode and the cathode. When you charge and discharge your device, lithium ions are violently shuttled back and forth between these two sides.
I always picture the cathode like a microscopic bookshelf. When you charge the battery, lithium ions are being ripped off the shelves, and when you use the device, they are being aggressively shoved back in.
That's a great analogy. And that aggressive chemical movement causes severe structural stress. The shells want to expand, contract, and eventually degrade.
And if they collapse,
If they collapse, the battery loses capacity, or worse, goes into thermal runaway and catches fire.
yikes.
Yeah. So cobalt acts as the steel brackets holding those microscopic shells together. By incorporating cobalt into the cathode, the crystal structure remains completely stable. Even as lithium ions are moving in and out, it drastically improves the battery's energy density and safety.
So it allows a phone to stay thin but last all day, or a heavy electric vehicle to drive 300 miles on a single charge without the battery degrading after a month.
Exactly.
But acquiring the raw material to build those cathode brackets is where the story gets deeply complicated.
Because getting cobalt out of the earth is inherently difficult. It is rarely found in pure, isolated deposits. It's almost exclusively a byproduct of copper and nickel mining.
Where do they find it?
You extract it from laterite ores, which are essentially weathered tropical soils, or from sulfide ores, which are these hard, deep volcanic rocks.
And because it's a byproduct, the economics are super messy. If the
Right.
world suddenly needs 10 times more cobalt for electric vehicles, miners can't just go open a cobalt mine. They have to mine more copper or nickel just to get to the cobalt.
And the geography of those ores is highly concentrated. Countries like Indonesia, Russia, Australia, and the Philippines are major producers. But the global supply is overwhelmingly dominated by a single nation, the Democratic Republic of the Congo.
Here's where it gets really interesting, and I want to be very precise about what the source material is outlining here. It introduces a concept it calls the clean energy paradox. And look, we are not here to debate the politics of electric vehicles or renewable energy policies. We are strictly looking at the facts reported in this dossier. And the factual reality is that technologies universally categorized as clean and green for the environment are heavily reliant on a material supply chain fraught with severe human rights and environmental abuses.
Yeah, the extraction in the DRC is under intense international scrutiny. The dossier details a deeply fractured mining sector.
It's not just big corporations, right?
No, alongside large industrial mines, there is a massive informal sector of artisanal mining. We see well-documented instances of unsafe, hand-dug tunnels prone to collapse.
Awful.
There is the widespread use of child labor. Workers face toxic cobalt dust exposure without protective gear, leading to severe respiratory illnesses.
And the dossier also notes the ecological devastation at the local level, widespread water contamination and toxic runoff, basically poisoning local agriculture. It creates a stark juxtaposition.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, look at the physical device you are using right now. The battery inside it is an absolute marvel of human engineering, keeping you connected to the globe.
Truly.
But as the dossier poses, who pays the hidden cost for that clean technology? Can the sleek interface of our digital world remain innocent when the extraction of its core stabilizing element is hidden from the consumer?
It's a heavy question. We benefit from the convenience and the lack of carbon emissions on our roads, but the geopolitical dependency, the toxic labor conditions, and the environmental damage are offshored to places far outside the daily view of the average consumer.
And the industry is acutely aware of this massive vulnerability. Battery manufacturers and automotive companies are currently scrambling to engineer cobalt out of their supply chains entirely.
Right, they're looking for alternatives.
Yeah, they're pivoting toward lithium iron phosphate batteries and other chemistries, not just to avoid the ethical nightmare, but to mitigate the extreme supply risks and the volatile cost of relying on a byproduct mineral.
But the dossier issues a warning here. If you somehow manage to engineer cobalt out of consumer batteries, you haven't untangled the modern world from it.
Not even close.
You still need the superalloys for aerospace. You still need the radiation for oncology. You still need the industrial magnets. Cobalt is categorized internationally as a critical, economically important element. Our entire strategic infrastructure is just interwoven with its physical properties.
It essentially acts as the blue shadow of modern technology. It represents profound beauty, medical miracles, and a crushing moral burden simultaneously. The narrative of cobalt, as the text explores, is really the story of humanity harnessing a cosmic byproduct, turning it into power, and then being forced to confront the human costs required to maintain that power.
So what does this all mean? When we step back, cobalt is an element of almost dizzying contradictions.
It really is.
It's essential for life. Without it anchoring our B12, our blood and nervous system fail. It provides life-saving radiation. It gives us the historic, calming beauty of cobalt blue in our finest art.
And it is the brutal, heat-resistant muscle of a jet turbine, and the ethically compromised, structurally vital heart of the batteries driving our digital and green energy revolutions.
It's an intensely specialized force of nature. And as we close out this deep dive, I want to leave you with one final thought to ponder. Because the demand for cobalt isn't vanishing, it is simply looking for a new frontier.
The deep sea.
Exactly. Early in the dossier, during the geological breakdown, it mentions another location where cobalt is highly concentrated, deep-sea manganese nodules.
These are basically potato-sized rock formations resting completely undisturbed miles down on the abyssal plains of the ocean floor.
Right. And as global awareness of the human rights nightmare in places like the DRC grows, and as the hunger for battery storage continues to skyrocket, there is a massive, incredibly controversial push to start vacuuming up these nodules from the bottom of the sea.
It's a huge debate right now.
Huge. So here's the question you have to ask yourself. As we try to escape the moral weight and the visible human suffering of mining cobalt on land, will our relentless technological desire simply shift the destruction?
Are we just moving the problem?
Exactly. Are we actually going to solve the clean energy paradox, or are we just going to relocate the ethical and environmental devastation from the land we can see down into the unexplored, fragile ecosystems of the deep ocean where we can't?
It is the exact same paradox, simply hidden beneath miles of water instead of miles of supply chain opacity.
It really forces you to look at the everyday objects around you differently. The next time you pick up your phone, admire a piece of blue pottery, or look up at a jet crossing the sky, remember the invisible forces and the hidden costs that make it all possible. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the hidden histories behind the world around you, and we will catch you next time.